Hello, and welcome to Maybe I Can, exploring possibilities one sprinkle at a time. If you've ever found yourself asking, is this all there is to life? Then you're in the right place. I'm Debbie, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and coach. And every Tuesday, I'm here to share a sprinkle of hope and inspiration. Together, we'll uncover the more joy, more fulfillment, more prosperity, more fun. We'll share stories of transformation, actionable tips, and that little nudge you need to take the next step. So let's embark on this journey of discovery and say, maybe I can, to a life filled with more. Ready to find out? Let's get started. The Maybe I Can show starts now. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm Debbie Weiss, your host of the Maybe I Can podcast. And talking about more, I brought with me today a special guest who also likes to talk about achieving more in your life. Today, my guest is Beth Larsen. She also has a podcast on the Transformation Talk Radio called The Flourish Frequency. And Beth is an energy alchemist and quantum success coach for high achieving women who want more joy, more energy, more passion, more money, and more meaning. Beth holds so many certifications, I'm probably going to mess something up as I read them to you, but I'm going to give it a go. She is a high performance coach, happy for no reason facilitator, which I love that one, money breakthrough business coach, higher brain living facilitator, emotion code practitioner, and is a certified breath master and offers a variety of programs for women who want to go beyond thriving and fully flourish. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that we both are into more.
I know, that was so funny when I read your bio. I said, oh my goodness, no wonder you're my first guest since I've been on Transformation Talk Radio. It was meant to be.
Our frequencies were aligned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to start with my signature question that I ask all my guests, which is, tell us about a time when you went from a defeated I can't attitude to an empowered maybe I can attitude.
That's a great question. For me, I would have to say that came from a period of time in my life that really was a big transition for me. In my background, I had worked for 23 years. I actually worked in the retail industry, and I was in the executive leadership for the last 10 years of that. And it was a career that I absolutely loved for many years. But at some point, I had lost the passion, and I didn't actually realize it at the time. It wasn't until I actually hit a space of burnout, like actual physical burnout, where I was being forced to really step away to take care of some health concerns, that I actually was forced to look at and realize the reason the health stuff was showing up was because I had lost all of the emotional passion. I had lost all of my real drive that had me going. So that was a period of time where I was definitely in a funk, if you will. And my mindset when I stepped away was, I'm going to fix what I did wrong and go back and do it better. Because I was still in that mindset of thinking that something was broken and that needed to be fixed. And, it wasn't until I stepped away to actually do some training for me in the high performance. Because let me just make let me clarify something. I would have considered myself a high achiever, but now I know I was not a high performer, and there is a difference, right? So I had achieved a lot, but high performers have the achievements, but also can sustain their health, their happiness, and their relationships in the process.
So that's the difference between an achiever and a performer.
Yes, that's the difference. So I was achieving, but I wasn't in that space of high performing at that point. So when I started to actually do some training for myself and I got into it, I started realizing, I really started having these aha moments and realizing, well, wait a minute, this is actually the part of the job that I loved, was coaching and developing, but I didn't have that belief that I could actually create a career out of that at the time. And I didn't realize at the time either that I had I had created a lot of stories for myself around money and about working hard and how that translates into how you're rewarded. So
Mm.
when I started to first entertain the idea of becoming a coach, that really kind of messed me up, right? That was kind of like, but could I make the same amount of money? Could I sustain myself? Could I actually make a career out of this? Like all of these stories started to come up to the surface that I didn't know were there. And so when you ask that question, this was the point where I was entertaining that, well, maybe I could, but could I?
Yep.
It was definitely going back and forth. I wasn't fully bought into it right away. But when I started to realize that actually, I had in my previous career, while I had achieved so much and I had the big salary and I had the benefits package and I had the company car and I had all of that, what I didn't realize was that I had actually created a ceiling for myself, that I had a cap on what I could make. And not only was I questioning, could I even do that? But it didn't even entertain the idea of, could I do more than that?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah,
I
that was
have
the
a
ultimate
ceiling.
prize, you thought.
That was like the ultimate, like in my mind, it didn't even occur to me. Not only could I do that, but I could do way more than that. And I'm really talking from a very monetary standpoint right now because I would never have considered myself to have been somebody that had a money story. Like I just didn't think that I had those money stories and money, beliefs and all of that. And it's one of the reasons now, while the majority of what I really truly coach on is diving in with people on the meaningful things in life. The more for me really is about more joy and more energy and more passion and more meaning. But I also don't shy away from the more money because I think
Sure.
that's one area where so many, especially women, really get themselves hooked and
Yeah.
don't realize how much power they've given away to money and allowed money to make decisions for them in their lives.
That is absolutely true. Let's go back a little bit. Tell me, did you know when you said that when you were in that career, you didn't know that you were burnt out. You didn't realize that you didn't have any joy or any passion anymore. Did you even know at that point that coaching was a career outside of, corporate?
I knew about executive coaching,
That makes
because
sense.
obviously being in a corporate
Yeah.
role, that part I knew. And so leadership coaching and that type of thing. But personal coaching and personal growth and transformation was still a very new area for me at that point. So I didn't see that part of it. And again, when I first became a coach, it was all high performance. So again, my mindset was I'm going to go coach executives. Well, now I get to coach executives, but I coach way more than that. And I coach them on way deeper things than just their leadership skills. I actually coach them on leadership, but it's self leadership and how
Right.
are they leading themselves forward in their lives to what's meaningful and what's important.
I just lost my train of thought, but I was going to say something about I'm writing the book. All right. It was something that was just on my mind. So brain, little brain glitch there. Did you even, I think what I was thinking is I was just writing this chapter on curiosity.
Mm,
Um, and that I was not even aware, like of all your certifications that I just read. Now, some of them I don't know what they mean, but some I do. And the point being that so many things that I felt were woo woo or I was unfamiliar with were so far out there that they were things that I had prejudged and determined that's ridiculous, that's not for me, you know, were, I can honestly say that I was that person until I shifted that mindset and started one by one on that little journey of exploration, and each step of the way realized, oh, maybe being a little more open minded, you
yeah.
know, I can learn a lot more about myself and all of that. What was your mindset prior to, I'll say your pivotal moment or your health issues? Where were
Yeah.
you in that personal development woo-woo type space.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've always had that tendency, that leaning towards that in terms of a curiosity. I love that you use the word curiosity because that's a really important aspect. But I did also, I found that it would get shut down a lot in the corporate life. What I will say, what I've learned is that at the core, it's all teaching the same stuff. Like my high performance certification, if you strip it all back, it's the same foundational principles from a spiritual edge, but it uses different language.
Yeah.
It meets different people where they're at in their journey, in their career. I fully embrace my woo side now. Bring it on. But I'm also very much about the quantum and quantum physics. So it's part spirituality, part science, but they're saying the same thing. Ultimately, science is now validating what the spiritual side never needed to have validated, but it's kind of cool to see it getting validated.
Oh, yeah. So let me have you talk to the person who was like me, didn't believe in any of this, didn't even understand what is this whole energy thing? What does this mean? Like basics 101.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
us an explanation.
Well, the first thing I would get into with somebody is discussion of energy and just the physical energy. Tell me about the physical energy that you're feeling in your life and really start to understand how that is manifesting for them. Yeah, there's a loaded word there, manifestation, right?
Yeah.
But your physical energy is a manifestation. And so it is it's the outward manifestation of what's going on mentally and emotionally and spiritually inside. So if that's where somebody's at, I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with their physical energy and how it's showing up in their physicality in life. And then what I usually find is I get a lot of people who are very left brain, logical, more masculine energy. Yeah,
That's
because that
me.
that was totally me.
Which is great because you can understand and relate.
100%, 100%. So what I recognize, and that's that high achiever. That's very much the high achiever, right? That needs to figure everything out. It's also a by me consciousness, right? The person who, well, I guess let me go into consciousness for a second there, because that's another thing to talk about here. Um, I work with a lot with the 4 levels of consciousness. So I refer to them as the 4 levels of consciousness. It's a concept I learned through Dr. Beckwith, Michael Bernard Beckwith. And I think he speaks to it in terms of 4 levels of manifestation, but it's about the by me consciousness, the to me consciousness, the through me consciousness, or the as me consciousness. So to me consciousness is going to be that victimhood space where you're walking through life where everything is happening to you. And you feel powerless and you feel like you don't have control, and it's very fear driven. The by me consciousness is not victimhood, but it's very much where those high achievers live. I can make things happen. I can figure it out. I can, I can do tons of action, but it's all from a very limited space, a limited consciousness of this is what I can see and this is what I know how to do. Ultimately, the through me consciousness is where you start to open up into that space of co-creation and you start to allow things to come to and through you. And that is for the by me consciousness high achiever, that can be hard to get into initially, because you
You
have
explain what you mean by that
yeah,
coming
well, you've
through
got to be
you.
able to give up control, right? You've got to be
Yeah.
able to give up to something greater than you to realize there is something greater than you that created you. And, it wasn't just your mom and dad,
Yeah.
right? There is a creator that actually, whether you believe in God, universe, spirit, whatever that is, there is a higher power that has created all of us. And that source has way more resources than an individual does, operating from a by me consciousness. So when you give up the need to control everything,
Which is
and
the hardest thing ever,
for
at
the
least
high
for me.
for the type
Mm-hmm.
A's and all that, absolutely, but and that's where the burnout happens, is in by me consciousness.
Yes.
Because you can only go so far on your own, right? And you can get very far. In fact, you can go for years and years and years getting a lot of success, but then eventually it catches up to you. And eventually, if you really do want things to be easier, then you've got to be able to release that need for control and start to allow things to happen through you. And then there's also the as me consciousness, which is the consciousness or the perspective that you come from. I guess that's another way of looking at this, is different perspectives, um, where you recognize that there's no separation from you and that source, that you are one with that source. And for me, I always look at it when I return to source, when I plug back into source, whether that's through meditation, prayer, just getting silent, really connecting back in. When I return to source, I become resourceful.
Mm.
I have access to infinite resources, including money, which is a resource, but resources will show up in the form of ideas, people, circumstances, opportunities, and money and time. They're all resources, and they come from source.
I just have to share a personal experience that came to mind as you were describing that. When I first started, again, I wasn't a believer in any of this, and I first started meditating. It was the most uncomfortable thing that I had ever experienced in my life. And I was jumping out of my skin, and 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. And, fast forward years later now that I've been doing it, and I can actually say that, when I'm done, because in the morning I have to be done because moving on to the next thing, but I meditate for 25 minutes, I'm so upset that I'm done. And and now at other parts of the day, I think, oh, I wish I just had time to meditate. It's like I'm longing for it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. But I think the hard part for maybe people who were like I was is sticking with it long enough to get to that place. You think, oh, well, I mean, because this was me. I can't do meditation. That's not for me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's I guess with a lot of these things, it's just that curiosity to continue exploring.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I just put a post up on this today on social about the idea of the difference between working at things and playing with things. Because
Mm.
ultimately, again, high performers, or high achievers, I get this a lot. I started with a brand new client yesterday. At the end of a call, she said to me, "Okay, so what's my homework?"
Yeah.
Guess what? I don't want you to work at all this week. I want you to play. I want you to play with these ideas. I want you to take them on and try them on for size. I want you to have fun with it. I want you to be curious about it. I want you to use your imagination, and all of the more feminine energy than the hard masculine energy that feels like it needs to do work. Because when we think that the personal growth and uh, personal development has to be work, it's hard. That's when it's hard. It doesn't have to be hard. It gets to be easy. And if you let yourself play with the concepts and play around with it and try it on, and don't just take what I say for fact. Play with it for yourself, and put on your scientist cap, and test the waters out and see what works and see what doesn't, and see if you do this, what happens, and if you do that, what happens. It's so much more fun. And that's when your nervous system relaxes, the guard comes down, and you're able to actually lean in, and it is easier. And it gets easier and easier the more you do it. We don't have to suffer to have personal growth and transformation. We're only suffering when we're resisting or making it hard.
Mm, absolutely true. Is so when you were forced to stop your career, when you made that decision, how difficult was it? I mean,
Yeah.
were you scared of giving up the security of the income, or let's say your title?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, it wasn't actually something that in my mind I was walking away from forever. I did walk away from it, but it was with the mentality of I'm going to fix this and go back and do it better. It's like it just was that was my where my thoughts were at the time. And because I just didn't even recognize that I wasn't even happy. Why do I really want to go back to it? I'm not even loving it anymore. I had actually lost my boss. My boss had passed away um, a few years earlier, and I had never really fully grieved her loss.
Mm,
And instead, my way of honoring her was to just try and put my head in the sand and work harder,
yeah.
right? And that's what ultimately got me into the burnout. And I realized also something that I realized in hindsight was I had also made this person who she was my mentor. She was amazing, an incredible woman, but I had made her a source of a lot of stuff. When she was gone, the company and the other people weren't as exciting to me. And so that was an interesting learning because nothing outside of me should be my source. I'm
Right.
my source. My source is my source. And when I'm making things outside of me, the source of my happiness, of my joy, of my energy, of my money, when I'm making any of those things my source, that's where I'm disconnected. That's where I'm over in the by me consciousness. So again, that was a whole other learning and insight that I had much later in hindsight, looking back at it. But that's been a huge, huge learning because, and it's something I teach people because when we make the job our source of anything,
Yes.
we forget our own power. We're in circumstantial power then. We're making the circumstance or giving the circumstance the power, and we've lost our personal power in the process. So
It reminds me, I love that definition. And I think that, there's so many different ways to look at it that say the same thing. And I've said it on this podcast many times before. For me, it was hearing the formula from the success principles, which is E plus R equals O, which means event plus your response equals the outcome, which just means that, it's your response. It's up to you, not all the other things, people, events that are going on around you. You're
yeah,
the one who determines your path forward.
100%, 100%. The problem is most people aren't responding; they're in reaction.
Yes.
Right? They've got nervous systems that are reacting from fear, which is by me consciousness and to me consciousness are all fear based. So it's the reactions to get to a place of being able to respond. You've got to also be able to work with the nervous system and create just enough space between the event and the response, right? To be able to have
Yep.
just enough space where you can actually respond. Otherwise, you are just knee jerk reacting all the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Not the way we want to go about life, but so many of us do, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, what advice would you have for someone starting out who's listening, thinking, "Boy, all this stuff sounds interesting." I mean, where do you even start? There are so many different. You said go explore, which I think is a
Yeah.
fabulous advice. But is there any basic level? This is a good place to get a little introduction and get your feet wet.
In terms of resources, like,
Yeah, as far as energy
yeah,
work and those kinds of things, learning about the different varieties and teachings that are out there.
yeah. I will say actually one thing that's really big these days, and the reason why I got certified in this is breath work, because
Mm,
one of the things that can connect people from both the high performance side of things, but also the energy side of things, and connect you back into the spiritual side of things. Because and breath work is huge these days. It's everywhere. And there's many different styles of breath work from Wim Hof and pranayama and all of that. But the breath is, for me, it's one of the most important things because it does work on the nervous system
hmm
and it allows you to regulate. And whether you are just looking to feel better or you're looking to have that more spiritual connection, you're using something that is your own natural built-in resource. And we're just not taught how to use it. So for me, I would say that's probably one of the first places I love taking people is into breath work and how to use it. And there's a million different resources out there. I personally do transformational breathwork journeys, which is like an actual guided session. Um, and those are powerful for releasing trauma, for releasing the hold that the nervous system has, and to get people back into self-regulating. So that would be my number one thing to go to.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it's all over. It's
Yeah.
very popular right now. It's funny because I can remember when my oldest son has some depression and anxiety, and he had a therapist teach him box breathing.
Yeah.
And I had never been exposed to it, and just loved the concept. And I think for him, just the visual of, breathe, count to four, breathe in, and kind of, picture drawing that box in your head
Yep.
was super helpful. And when I try and do it myself, I think the nice thing about breath work is even something as basic as that, you can do it anywhere. People don't
Anywhere.
even know you're doing it.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And you can never say I don't have my tools with me.
Right, exactly.
Right there.
Oh my goodness. This 30 minutes has flown so quickly. I can't even believe it. So, why don't you share with the audience where they can learn more about you? What's the best place to find you? When's your show on the air?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my show, The Flourish Frequency, is every third Thursday um, here at the Transformation Network. And you can find me at BethLarsenCoaching.com. That's LARSEN coaching.com. And yeah, I have a variety of different programs from I have a monthly membership. I do the breathwork journeys each month. I do one-on-one coaching and group coaching, and I have a program called Wired for Wealth. So lots of different options, all different
Yep.
levels, and meeting people wherever they're at.
Yep. I encourage all the listeners to go check out her website. It's very cool and has a lot of great resources for you.
Thank
So,
you.
Beth, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to everybody else, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for spending part of your day with me here on Maybe I Can, exploring possibilities one sprinkle at a time. It's been great having you, and I hope you're leaving with a spark to light up your journey to more. Remember, every big change starts with a single maybe. If you're ready to kickstart that change but not sure where to begin, I've got just the thing for you. Head over to download my free guide, The One Critical Step to Kickstart Change, and take that all-important first step. Let's make those maybes into reality one sprinkle at a time. Catch you next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific with more stories, tips, and that extra push you might need. I'm Debbie saying goodbye for now, but always remember, maybe, just maybe, you can.